but Jairam had sent in his question. And Dr. Sabu, if I can just read that question on his behalf. Primarily, he's asking that post-COVID, his sugar levels are not coming down and he's been put on insulin. He is wanting to understand, will he be able to come back to tablet taking once again?
COVID, many of our patients with diabetes were put on insulin, maybe because of their uncontrolled diabetes, or maybe they were also started on a steroid for treatment of COVID. Those who were started for the insulin for the steroid-induced hyperglycemia, which is because of steroid, their sugar was high, there are more chances they will be again on their tablets form and their insulin will be stopped as the steroid is getting stopped. They will be stopping their insulin also. But the patients who are not able to control the diabetes during COVID time or post-COVID time, not on steroid, and they are put on the insulin, there is a possibility of stopping as well as there may not be. Because if the sugar remains uncontrolled, they may require insulin for longer period of time. But what is more important is the control of the sugar. Whether you are controlling with the tablets or with insulin, the major message which I want to give to everyone that we should have a tighter glycemic control. So one should not be afraid of that I am started on insulin and whether I will able to stop or not. So that's very important.
Right.
So
I hope Jairam gets that. Dr. Sabu, yes. You want to make your point, sir?
So Jairam is not
All
connected.
Right. I believe Dr. Sabu has concluded that, Shravan.
No. Hello.
Go ahead, Dr.
Can
Sabu.
you listen me? Yes.
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Jairam's major concern is whether he can stop insulin or not. So my message is that if he is not on steroid and he started on insulin just for the control of the sugar, probably he may require this insulin for a longer period of time. But his major concern should be rather a tight glycemic control rather than on insulin therapy. So insulin, he should not fear of that he is taking insulin. He should be more concerned about a good glycemic control that is more required for prevention of long-term diabetes complication. Thank you.
Right.
Let's also take some more questions that are coming in from our viewers right now. Shailendra Lalwani is calling from Nasik. His question is for Dr. Sanjay Agarwal. But before we go across to our callers, let's also get in some more perspective on this entire issue. And as Dr. Banshi Sabu was also pointing out with regards to certain concerns that are essentially emerging, Suesha, post-COVID and the kind of complications that are coming in, how exactly would you be actually, taking control of it?
Right.
What are the essential steps that can be taken?
Very true. And Shravan, I believe M. Habibullah from Tamil Nadu had sent in his question. I believe that's also flashing on our screens, where primarily he's trying to understand from Dr. Vasant Kumar. Dr. Vasant Kumar, if you're listening, he says, my fasting sugar was 92, but after breakfast it was 191. Can you tell me why this happened?
Okay. Whenever one of the blood sugars are more than normal, that means he's a diabetic. So what we should understand is whether Mr. Habibullah is already a known diabetic, or is it the first time that he is finding his post-lunch blood sugars being high. If it is for the first time, that means he's a diabetic. He needs to watch other parameters like doing the average blood sugar, what we call it HbA1c. Then he needs to watch his diet and his weight and other things. And if he is already a diabetic and his post-lunch sugars are high, normally we expect the post-lunch blood sugars for a diabetic patients to be at least below 170 milligrams. If he's on drugs, it is also important whether he has taken the tablet on that day before his usual meal. So if he doesn't take the tablet, it could erroneously show higher readings of the postprandial. So postprandial is important. Whatever it is, it should be also normal. That's my answer to the question.
Right. Right.
Well, we are getting a caller from Himachal Pradesh, Purushottam Lal. His question is for Dr. Amit Gupta. Purushottam Lal ji, आप अपना सवाल पूछ सकते हैं.
यस सर, मेरा सवाल है कि जो डायबिटीज है इसमें टाइप 1 और टाइप 2 कैसे हम इसको मेश्योर कर सकते हैं कि हमारे को टाइप 1 और टाइप 2।
पुरुषोत्तम लाल जी, आपने बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा है। जो टाइप 1 डायबिटीज होती है, टाइप 1 डायबिटीज अक्सर यंग लोगों में होती है, बच्चों में होती है। और टाइप 1 डायबिटीज की एक खास बात ये होती है कि इसमें बॉडी इंसुलिन बिल्कुल भी नहीं बना पाती है। तो इस तरह के जो पेशेंट्स होते हैं उनको अपनी जो ट्रीटमेंट में इंसुलिन का इस्तेमाल करना पड़ता है। और जो टाइप 2 डायबिटीज होती है अक्सर ये मिडिल एज या उससे ज्यादा अधिक एज में देखी जाती है, आजकल यंग एज में भी देखी जाने लगी है। और टाइप 2 डायबिटीज में इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस इज ए मेजर प्रॉब्लम। तो इंसुलिन रेजिस्टेंस एक समस्या है और ऐसे जो पेशेंट हैं उनको डाइट और एक्सरसाइज से बहुत ज्यादा फायदा हो सकता है और साथ ही में उनको ओरल टैबलेट्स भी दी जा सकती है। इंसुलिन भी यूज कर सकते हैं, लेकिन ये एक मेजर डिफरेंस है टाइप 1 और टाइप 2 डायबिटीज के बीच में।
जी सर।
जी
आप कुछ और पूछना चाहते
पुरुषोत्तम
हैं?
जी, धन्यवाद आपका सवाल पूछने के लिए। Right, Dr. Amit, I believe Purushottam has asked his question, and extremely important for a lot of our viewers to understand, Shravan, because that's the question that comes in most commonly, to how one can differentiate between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and then again, what are the consequences, what are the treatment, is it reversible, is it irreversible? And then again, Dr. Amit, to understand that lifestyle changes broadly, as we understand, can hugely help.
As you have told, that type 1 diabetes usually happens in the young children or in the childhood, and it requires insulin therapy because there is absolute deficiency of insulin formation or insulin production doesn't happen. Sometimes we do some tests for the diagnosis, but most of the time clinicians are able to make it through the clinical examination, the clinical picture itself. Type 2 diabetes doesn't. Type 2 diabetes is the garden variety of diabetes, which is seen in almost 95% of the population. So that is patients are obese, and most of the time it's clinical diagnosis of type 2 diabetes which can be done.
Dr. Gupta, thank you for answering that. We have more callers calling in. I believe, Shravan, next is Pramila Chatwani from Delhi. She's already connected with us on the phone line. Pramila, what's your question?
My question is that I'm a type 2 diabetic, but in day-to-day life, we generally are not able to eat our diabetic food. Sometimes we cheat also. So my question was that type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes is more dangerous. Because sometimes our sugars go up and we have to bring it down because it affects the nerves also. Hello?
Yes, Pramila. I believe that question is for Dr. Banshi Sabu, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Banshi Sabu, if you can answer that for Pramila.
So she is asking for the type 1 or type 2 diabetes, the differentiation. One is the major differentiation between type 1 and type 2 diabetes is that those who are in young age, they develop the diabetes and they have detected with a severe hyperglycemia, and many of them are detected with diabetic ketoacidosis. They get admitted also for the same. They are more type 1 diabetes. It is more in younger population. But for true diagnosis, we do one is C-peptide test for diagnosing them. And we also do the autoantibody testing for confirming these patients for their confirmation of diagnosis. But our major problem in our country is a type 2 diabetes, which is more than 95% of the patients, they are diabetes.
We're also getting another caller right now, Chandra Prakash, who's joining us from Chandigarh. His question is for Dr. Minal Mohit.
Hello.
So please go ahead with the question, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello. Can I know the question, please?
Yes, ma'am. My question is whether the current technology is coming like insulin pump therapy. So whether it is helpful for type 2 diabetes also, I heard it is helpful for type 1 diabetes only.
Insulin pump is a device to deliver insulin. It can be equally best used for type 1 or type 2 diabetes management. Any type 2 diabetes patient also who's taking insulin can be put on insulin pumps. Insulin pumps are basically just a device to deliver the insulin in the right manner, in the right dose. So it is not a specification that it is only designed for type 1, but it is more preferably used in type 1 because type 1 are the population which is only on insulin. Type 2 patients are mostly on tablets and they may be sometimes on insulin for long also. So even the type 2 patients, if they prefer going for insulins, it would be wonderful because it's a very good device and it can deliver insulin in a very right calculated dose. So it's a device to deliver insulin in both the populations, type 1 as well as type 2. You can use it for type 2 as well.
I hope that answers your question, and Dr. Minal Mohit, thank you for, of course, answering that. We have a lot of questions coming in, a lot of calls also, but I believe we also have some technical difficulty connecting some of them. And if I could come to Dr. Amit Gupta, Dr. Amit Gupta, I believe the next question is coming in from Bibhuti Swain in Orissa. Bibhuti, if you can hear me, please ask your question.
So I have a very generic question. If someone at the age of 73, if he is already on insulin, and can he come back to oral medicine?
See, it is important to understand that the aim of diabetes treatment is to keep your sugar in check, and sometimes it may be possible only with the help of insulin. And if somebody at the age of 70 or 72 years is getting hypoglycemia or is facing the problem of the low sugar, then there is a possibility that insulin doses can be lowered and it may not be required. But most of the time, if you are on insulin and your blood sugar are controlled, then it is better to continue your insulin therapy rather than thinking of going only to tablets. Because what is more important is to control the blood sugar, as Dr. Bansi has already pointed out, Dr. Vasant Kumar has also pointed out. So it is very, very important to control the blood sugar.
If I'm allowed to add something, the idea, Amit, is that we should explain and we should understand that why was the patient shifted to insulin? What was the reason of shifting to insulin? If the reason was for a very short time to tide over some surgical complication or any other short-term issues like GDM or sometimes some emergencies, then yes, the patient can safely be shifted to the oral tablets again. But if the reason was for some comorbid complications like some CKD or CLD, the liver failure or kidney failure or other comorbid conditions, then in such patients, we need to explain to them that the metabolic control is more important rather than switching the treatment from insulin to tablets.
I agree with you, Dr. Minal. That is what
that's certainly an important.
He's asking at the age of 70 years. So I think in elderly population, we do use insulin therapy, but we are very cautious because of the risk of hypoglycemia, which increases in the elderly population. So they need to monitor their blood sugar very regularly. I will suggest that if your father is on insulin, please monitor his blood sugar regularly. And if you find that sugar levels are on the lower side, then speak to your doctor so that the insulin dose can be adjusted. And if the insulin doses are very low, then at some time it may be possible to stop the insulin therapy altogether.
I think Dr. Minal made an important point, Dr. Amit. So since we are talking about insulin for type 2 diabetics, people should know that the insulin is prescribed for certain reason. Either the tablets are not working or they are using it temporarily for some situation like what Dr. Minal said. Finally, it is important to take the advice of the doctor. And if insulin is the one which is required for you, kindly continue insulin at the proper dose, avoid hypoglycemia, take the food in time, keep your sugars. Don't be against taking insulin because that's going to help you. It is prescribed because you need it.
Right.
So that's an important message I think we are carrying it to you.
Yes. Absolutely. And doctors, we have a lot of callers calling in. I believe Priyan Dongre is already with us on the phone line. She's calling from Delhi and her question is to Dr. Sanjay. Priya, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for putting me online. My query is that I have type 2 diabetes and it started in 2018. And I was in my 40s that time. So I wanted to ask that, over the years, how damaging it can be, diabetes. And then if I lose weight, maybe will that help in reducing it? Because I know that it cannot be, either reversed, diabetes, or, reduced. I can never lose it throughout my life now.
That's a very good question. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm in Shimla right now.
All right.
So,
Okay. So that's a very good question. Remember that irrespective of the fact that you started at the age of 40, whenever we initiate treatments, our first emphasis is always on lifestyle management. Try to reduce weight, eat a proper diet. This is going to be our first message across before we initiate medications. Just simple weight loss itself improves your blood sugar levels in a major way. There have been instances where people have lost significant amount of weight and they've been able to cut back on their medications or even go off medications if they have kept their weight in the ideal range. Now, given the fact that if you're not able to control your sugars adequately on
Doctor, I'm
lifestyle
sorry to
management,
interrupt you.
then it comes a time. Yes. Yeah.
Doctor, I'm really sorry to interrupt you because we're really running short of time. Because we have one more caller to take. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but we have one more caller, Peter Ribello, who's joining us from Goa, and his question is to Dr. B.M. Makkar. Peter, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello.
Peter, go ahead, ask your question.
Hello, yes, sir. Yeah, good morning, doctor. Doctor, I just wanted to find out.
Good morning.
That HbA1c, my percentage was 6.79, and this is only after I got COVID, and my mean blood glucose is 148. Is it harmful?
So, see, A1C is a very important parameter which tells you about overall glucose control over last 3 months period. For a normal individual, A1C should be, less than 5.7. Anything between 5.7 to 6.5 is considered pre-diabetes, and more than 6.5% is considered frank diabetes. Yeah. Now, 6.79% is not bad in terms of if you look at the control of glucose levels. But certainly, you should consult your physician, get the proper evaluation for diabetes. It's not just one A1C which is important. We also need to look at the glucose levels in the fasting state, in the post meal state, see the variations. And if you have got diabetes, I think it is also very important to look at other parameters, so-called comorbidities, which are with diabetes and lead to increase in the risk of heart disease and kidney disease. So you need the proper evaluation. It is not to be neglected. But for control of glucose levels, anything less than 7% is considered fairly good. And preferably, it should be less than 6.5% A1C, as long as we can do it without causing hypoglycemia or low blood sugar levels.
Right. Also, our next question coming in from Prabdeep Maan from Faridkot, Punjab, and his question is to Dr. Rakesh Parekh. If I could also read out the question, doctor, because he's already sent it across. He says, my FBS is 115 to 130 regularly, but my HB1AC is always between 6.8 to 8.2, and I'm taking my medicine also. What should I do to maintain my HB1AC is the question he asked, doctor.
See, HbA1c of 6.8 to 8.2 is a very broad range. It can be either 6.8 or 8.2 because that gives you the average of blood sugars for previous 3 months. When his HbA1c is 6.8, that is good control, as Dr. Makkar just told you. But if your HbA1c is 8.2, which means your sugars are high. As you said, if your fasting sugar is normal and still if your HbA1c is high, then there are 2-3 reasons for that. One is that maybe your postprandial sugars are high, though fastings are normal. So the average will be high. Second reason can be if you are doing the sugars when you are taking medicines regularly or following diet properly, the fasting sugar might come normal. But for the overall period, if you are missing your tablets or if you are cheating on diet, then your average sugars will go up. So I would, and there are certain other medical conditions also that can give these variations in HbA1c. So there can be multiple factors. I guess you should just consult your doctor and ask him to explain these things in detail to you, and that will help.
Well, would like to thank all our panelists who joined us on this broadcast. It has certainly helped us to also understand what perhaps can be done. And what's very important here is that awareness, essentially what we believe would be leading to access. And the doctors today on this panel essentially did that. We thank all the doctors who joined this interaction on our World Diabetes Day. A big thank you to all our panelists for joining us on this show today. Awareness and access are two sides of the same coin. People living with diabetes need uninterrupted access to medicines, care, education and support.
Absolutely, Shravan, and we cannot wait any longer for diabetes care to be made available to all those who need it, which is why I also want to remind all our viewers as we wrap this show to control diabetes with experts who can give a missed call on 740 1100 and also stand a chance to get a free glucometer and expert advice from Beto to ensure access for all and to do more for people living with diabetes. Catch our special campaign Beto India Beats Diabetes in association with Republic Media Network. Thank you all for watching.